Good morning to everybody who is joining us today. We're just going to give it, I would say, a minute or two. We've got a healthy crowd that's been registered for today. Welcome. Thank you for making the time on today's session. I'm going to let you join in. Sit back and relax, maybe have a cup of tea or coffee, whatever you prefer. And we are going to make a start in a minute or two. So thank you again for making the time and sit back and get settled in. I can see that we have quite a bit of numbers joining in today. It's just about 10 o'clock. Let's give the delegates a minute or two to join in. Just going to adjust my screen so I can see the rest of the panel as well. Thank you. There we go. 1 minute past 10. I'm going to give it a couple of seconds and then we are going to make a start on today's session. Okay, I think that should be it. So, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for making the time to join us on today's webinar. Today's session is focused around ethical sourcing and best practice around sustainable procurement in laboratories and the lab spend categories. I have an expert panel with me today. We are going to introduce ourselves in a while. So, thank you once again, and let us make a start. A couple of house rules. At the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A function. Please do use that sort of question and answer box for any queries or questions that you have for any of our panel members. The Q&A section, we keep it right towards the end, and we will aim to answer as many questions as we possibly can today. We do also have a marketing team that's supporting us. So we have the PDF versions of all of the content that is going to be presented today. So you will get a copy of that content and slides as well. Should you feel the necessity to take notes, feel free to take notes as well, or you can sit back and relax. At the end of the session, our team will send out a bit of a feedback form. We're always looking for your inputs and feedback as we always look to run these knowledge sessions for all of our audience. I promise you we will introduce ourselves in a while, but just to run you through the agenda. After the introduction, I'll do a little bit of summary in terms of the work that we're currently carrying out and also have carried out in the higher education sector with colleges and universities. What have been their challenges, especially around the laboratory spend categories and with the supply chain and in the procurement process? From there, I'm going to hand over to the panel members from Imperial College London. We have 3 panel members from Imperial College. They are going to talk about the work that both the procurement and the sustainability teams are doing with the laboratory department and faculties in reducing their carbon footprint, thinking about water usage, water circularity, and waste management as well. Also on today's session, we've got the consortia members. So we've got the London University's Purchasing Consortium. Antonio has joined us today. He is going to talk about the frameworks around STEMED and lab categories that LUPC are responsible for setting up and talk especially around those ethical sourcing, responsible sourcing requirements that are contained within. One of the elements that we look to embed into the college and university specifications and procurement process is around EPDs and eco labels. To highlight one of those, we've got Dylan from My Green Lab. He's going to specifically talk about the ACT, Green Label and Eco Label, talk about the specificities, the challenges, but also he's got some good news case studies of where this has been implemented. So the panel are here to share their knowledge, the challenges, but also the good news case studies, and they've got some tips and tools for you today. I would say look out in the chat box as the panel are speaking. I will be putting out some of the links to these eco labels, the best practice as well, links to the framework so you can take away the resources as well. And of course, towards the end, we've got the Q&A session. Hi, panel. I'm going to get the panel to introduce themselves, starting with Will. Hello.
Uh, Hello, good morning, everyone. My name's Will. I'm the Sustainable Procurement Manager here at Imperial, and my role is principally looking at how we can embed sustainable procurement across the university and our supply chain, but also how we can improve the Scope 3 data we're getting from our suppliers to account for Imperial's overall carbon footprint.
Lovely, lovely to have you. Zafar, you're next to my screen. Hello.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Zafar Khan. I am working in procurement as the laboratory category manager, and I'm here to talk about what we're doing.
Lovely to have you, Zafar. Alison, also from Imperial. Hello.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Alison Hunter. I'm Head of Technical Operations in Life Sciences at Imperial, and I've been doing sustainability since 2008 when the lab I worked in ran out of power for equipment. So what takes the power in the lab and how can we do better?
Lovely to have you, Alison, and those would be some great stories that we'd love to hear sometime. Dylan, you're next to my screen. Hi.
Hi, good morning. My name's Delan. I work with My Green Lab and Impact Laboratories on the outreach and expansion of the ACT Eco label, located in Dublin. Great to be here. Thank you.
Lovely. And last but definitely not least, we've got Antonio from LUPC.
Hi there, my name's Antonio Ramirez. I'm the STEMID and Labs category manager at LUPC. We do collaborative sourcing, which is essentially mostly putting together supplier frameworks into different categories and within categories and the different kind of product subcategories, I guess. And I'm here to talk about a little bit about procurement and more specifically about the responsible procurement elements in a current tender that I'm running, which is general lab equipment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you once again to the panel for agreeing to be here today and share your knowledge, expertise, and experience. That's me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Melita De Silva. You can refer to me as Mel. I'm the lead consultant for sustainable procurement and social value at Action Sustainability. I've got about 22 years experience in procurement, sustainable procurement, and social value. Previously in a delivery role, now as a consultant. And those are my details should you wish to reach out to us. A very, very quick summary around the work that we are doing with the higher education sector, but also what are they looking to do to sort of implement and align themselves with best practice in sustainable procurement and responsible sourcing. If you've not heard of the standard, so ISO 2400 is the guidance standard for sustainable procurement. And a lot of organizations, including universities, colleges, research organizations, and even the NHS on the medical sector, are aligning themselves with best practice and continuous implementation and improvement. The pieces of work that we are currently doing with the higher education sector involves starting right at the beginning, helping them to benchmark in terms of best practice within their sector and industry. Where are they in terms of their net zero ambitions, or talking about things like modern slavery mitigation, biodiversity, eliminating single use plastics, waste management? Looking at developing a policy strategy toolkit for sustainability and sustainable procurement that's actually implemented and implementable rather than just developing policies for policy's sake. Helping them heat map, analyze where the risks and opportunities are for sustainability, in which categories of spend, and therefore what kind of influence and leverage they have in those different spend categories, faculties, and departments. Then going into deeper dive, helping them refine the procurement process, having early engagement not just with the market, but also with the faculties and departments internally, uprev their due diligence, onboarding questionnaires to embed their sustainability considerations and also flowing it down into their tenders and contracts. All of this requires a lot of engagement, so we also help them with training and workshops, both internally and especially for the SME supply chain. This is a little bit of a background of the sort of work we do. And that's the reason for today's workshop. In all of the work that we do, some of the common elements and issues that sort of stand out is ethical sourcing is definitely something that the research, medical, and the higher education sector are aiming towards, ensuring that raw materials, reagents, all of the supplies are procured responsibly. You're thinking triple bottom line: environmental, social, and economic. This basically means you need to absolutely prioritize your sustainable practices, fair labor standards as well, and minimize any kind of harmful effects you could have through the supply chain. I think higher education sectors, but also research and medical, we're often faced with the challenges with excessive water usage, water pollution, over ordering of chemicals, therefore they're either wasted or material becomes obsolete. Higher energy consumptions, waste and recyclability not carefully planned or looked after in those laboratory spend category areas. It's not something that you can solve overnight. And you will hear that absolutely today from our panel, where they'll shine a light on the challenges, but also give you some tips and best practice. So today we're going to look at starting with, the consortia frameworks for laboratories, what has already been embedded in there in terms of sustainability, responsible sourcing due diligence. Imperial is going to shine a light on their best practices. How are they engaging stakeholders? What are they doing with those laboratory categories to make sure that spend area is more ethical and more responsibly sourced? And Dolan is going to deep dive into the ACT Eco label as well. We deal with a lot of colleges, universities, and medical sector. For me, if I got £1 for every time I heard the word autoclaves, I would definitely be a millionaire, and I'm sure some of the panel members as well. So, without stealing the thunder of the panel, I am now going to hand over to Imperial College, and this is going to be over to you, Will.
Lovely. I'm going to just share my screen and get my slides up.
Right.
Oh, is that coming through? 1 second. There we go.
That's good. We can see your slides.
Fantastic. Okay. Hello, everyone. Lovely to meet you. So just in short, I'm going to kick off with going over what we're doing in relation to our sustainability strategy at Imperial and how that links down to our lab procurement category as well. So to start off, I just want to give you some context of Imperial's footprint and why we're doing this work. So Imperial's got a net zero target for its scopes 1 and 2 emissions for 2040, and the ambition to reduce its scope 3 where possible. Within that context, our scope 1 accounts for 8% of our total footprint, our scope 2 is 9%, and our scope 3 is a whopping 83%. Which is pretty significant. And so tackling scope 3 is essential if we are wanting to reduce Imperial's overall carbon emissions. To give you a breakdown of how that scope 3 footprint looks, roughly 50% of our emissions are related to our procurement and supply chain activities, and the other 50% are linked to university-related travel. This again sets the precedent that procurement is a real big hitting area for us in order to reduce those emissions. And the question is, how are we tackling this? So in 2024, Imperial released its sustainable procurement policy strategy and guidance, which is to cover all university-related procurement, and that was developed with the support of Action Sustainability. This policy is now active and is being applied to all significant procurement within the university. And key to this is we've looked at how we incorporate sustainability weighting into our tenders. So for all major contracts, we're now including a 20% weighting that is separate from price and quality as a standalone, for which we're assessing our vendors on, and then a smaller 10% for smaller suppliers. And in addition to this, I was hired as the Sustainable Procurement Manager to support in issuing these tenders, but also embedding sustainable procurement practices across the university as well. For 2025, we set out several key actions for ourselves that we're going to look to incorporate throughout the year. One is to directly survey all of our major suppliers to gather data on their sustainability, but also the initiatives that they're undertaking. For the context of definition, we've accounted our major suppliers to be the top 250 that we have at Imperial, and that's encompassing roughly 75% of our spend in procurement. In addition, and to support us with this, we also were onboarded with the Net Positive Futures Net Zero Supplier Tool, which has been incredibly useful as a means of engagement with our suppliers and supply chain in general. And I'm going to go into that in a bit more detail on the next slide. And then finally, we've been working to refresh our procurement targets. So we've got something a bit more defined than that, reduce where possible, and specifically for procurement, looking at what data-led approaches we can employ to set a target, for reducing our procurement-related emissions. So the Net Positive Futures tool, this is something that we were onboarded on in 2025, and essentially it acts as a central database where suppliers who are linked to the HE sector or supply institutions in the HE sector can submit their sustainability data, including carbon, and then institutions like Imperial or other universities can then access it, and essentially it acts as a central point and kind of bypasses the need to send lots of surveys out to different suppliers and having suppliers having to fill out multiple surveys from their customers. We did try that approach in the autumn, and of the 150 we contacted, I think we had about a 10% response rate, which just wasn't adequate. So we were really happy to see that there was something like this on the market. And essentially for us, it's been able to streamline our carbon and other sustainability data collection from our suppliers. It's also worked to improve the accuracy of our Scope 3 reporting because we're able to access actual data from our suppliers. And in addition to this, it gives us a nice window as to what sustainability actions that our suppliers are undertaking and how potentially we as an educational institution can support them. For the tool itself and what it can offer to our suppliers, first off, it's free to use. There's currently 40 UK universities using the tool, which is great because it allows for a bit of collective action for us and say other like-minded universities who are engaging with it. As I said before, there's an administrative saving associated, and there's also in-house support around carbon footprinting as well. Touching on targets, so this was something that we started in the spring of this year, and we employed the consultancy Eunomia to help support us with this. And essentially, we looked at the data that we were getting in from Net Positive, but also traditionally the spend-based data we were using via HESCET, and set out three ambition pathways for decarbonising our procurement activities. So we had a low, medium and high. And this modelling was used as a means to also set decarbonisation targets for our procurement activities as well. So out of this work, you can see on the side what this would look like, but we set it for what our decarb pathways would look in 2030 and also in 2050. And with that, we've been able to set informed targets, both on an absolute and an intensity basis, for what our decarbonisation could look like. For Imperial, because we're looking to grow a lot over the coming years, we've focused more on intensity, and we've broken those into what would be realistic for Imperial if certain actions were undertaken, but also what we could do if we wanted to be really ambitious in reducing those emissions as well. And with that, I'm going to pass on to Zafar.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Today I'll talk about the sustainability considerations for procurement at Imperial College. Next slide, please, Will. So what are the key facts? To recap, 80% of Imperial's carbon footprint sits in Scope 3. Procurement and supply chain make about half of this footprint. And the procurement team deals with over 3,000 suppliers, 250,000 orders per year. Now, the laboratory category, which I look after, makes up 30% of Imperial's carbon footprint. And we specifically manage 50 preferred suppliers to, using Pareto analysis and other forms of analysis to bring those supply numbers down to a more manageable category, depending on the impact of spend profit as well as sustainability. Next slide, please. So as in procurement, we're continuously dealing with stakeholders, be they connected internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, regulatory bodies, and from that we need to account for the needs of the internal stakeholders, and these needs are continuously changing, and so it's critical that we look at the critical success factors to meet the needs of our internal customers. So, for example, we now have LEAF and My Green Lab schemes, and we want to encourage our suppliers to suggest sustainability innovations as well as other innovations, but sustainability is one of them. We look at internal marketing of sustainability products and services through the intranet, working groups, exhibitions, webinars, advertising, and also incorporating sustainability into the tendering process. As Will mentioned, it's 10% for smaller suppliers and 20% for the bigger contracts. So we have a factor rating model there on that weighting of 20% or 10%. We use a platform called Jaeger, and that is similar to Science Warehouse, Amazon, eBay. It follows the same methodology. And because we're using that, we want to use it to its full potential by giving buyers more information on how to identify sustainable products, and then also through the intranet and stakeholder engagement strategies. Next slide, please. So this third-party catalog platform, Jaeger, we have a total of 38 suppliers on the platform, and this platform has 4 million tangible items that are currently live. Now, on there, we currently have only 100,000 items flagged as being green or having green attributes. So it's about 2.5% of the items labeled as green. And out of the 38 suppliers, 8 suppliers are using green flags on their catalog. So we wanted to, take into account the critical success factors and implement KPIs for the needs of the stakeholders, and develop metrics for measurements and performance of these suppliers uploading sustainable attributes to the catalog, and incorporating, supplier scorecards, which includes the metrics of the percentage of products that are labeled as sustainable. And also we would be checking those sustainable products on an ad hoc basis that they do meet the criteria and that it's not simply greenwashing. Next slide, please. So continuing on with the third-party catalog, so the attributes that are currently available on the Jaeger system are Energy Star, green or recycled. To load the green attributes on the platform, the data team of the supplier need to do a content file upload, and we do rely on the supplier in terms of the quality of the data, and labeling those items as green, and flagging information related to credible schemes such as ACT, Net Positive, SA 8000, ISO 14001, ISO 20400, and LEED, for example. And these items which are flagged as sustainable should include reusable, repairable, quality assured, less hazardous, more energy efficient, responsible packaging, extended life of the product, to give the Imperial buyers the confidence to try them. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll pass you over to Alison now. Thank you.
I don't know if Alison's.
Alison,
There
you're
we go.
on mute. Yeah, okay.
Brilliant.
Great, thank you. I'll talk to you about our sustainable lab practices and procurement. Next slide, please, Will. So before we look at what we're buying, it's like what is the perception? So this study was done by our Sustainable Hub team, and what people's perceptions are where we could make the most impact and not where actually we can make the big impact. So our lab purchases, our travel is really large, and our IT and kit, but usually in surveys it's the waste and food that come up, and sort of buildings and comfort, cooling in the buildings. So next slide, please, Will. So the biggest procurement thing that you can do is not buy things. Do you need to buy it? So what we do in my department, my position was created to look at our portfolio across 2 campuses. We've got 20,000 pat testable items of equipment. So finding out what we had was one of my first tasks when I started in the department. We have weekly grant alignment meetings. So we have over 100 academics submitting grant applications to get equipment and staff and consumables for the research that they're doing. And they put in a pre-application to us, and we review it to see, well, they need a Clariostar plate reader, or they need a confocal microscope. And I have a look at our portfolio and say, well, actually, you don't need that. We've already got it. So we're trying to prevent people buying things that we already have. So having a really good asset register of what you've got, and it's very movable. Our equipment moves around, our safety cabinets, our fridges and freezers. So keeping track of everything is a bit like 3D chess, but that can prevent you having to buy things. There's a huge amount of embodied carbon in the equipment that you buy. It's not so much the consumables and solvents that you have, certainly for our department. So submitting grant applications, certainly this year already, Wellcome and Cancer Research have stipulated that they want to have a certification in place. So all of the people in our department, sort of a few months ago even, were submitting sustainable information on their grant applications, but they will need to have that certification finished by the end of this year. UKRI haven't mandated this yet, but as you can see, there have been recent meetings so that if you're doing big collaborative projects across Europe, there'll be more harmonisation across Europe for looking at sustainability and research, so that we're not ruining the planet just because we're doing research into that. As a bench scientist and a technician all of my life, I've sometimes done hundreds of orders a week. So how do you make that decision to what is sustainable to buy? It's actually quite tricky. As you can see from the slides from Zafar, having that information to hand is becoming increasingly available, but not easy when you might be doing lots of orders for your lab. So together with Harriet Wallace, our Director of Sustainability, a working group from across different universities and funders and suppliers, and together with the Higher Education Procurement Association, the Environmental Association of Universities and Colleges, we held a symposium last October to look at these issues. And it was the first time that the funders, the suppliers, the consortia and the lab purchasers were all brought together. So the whole ecosystem of how we do the research, to see what can we do collectively, because I think one lab, one university isn't gonna cut it. We all need to be working together to harmonise across the sector. So the full link to that whole slide deck, it was a whole day of slides and discussion about this, and we wrote a short article about 8 ways you can help make research labs more sustainable. So a lot of it is about buying less, buying better? Is it equipment that's repairable, or is it equipment that's more energy or water efficient, but might cost a little bit more, but over the lifetime of the equipment, you'll get that money back? What can suppliers do to certify their sustainability claims? So we don't want any greenwashing. Can they make their kit more repairable and last longer? And for funders, to make it easy, I found it really difficult as head of technical operations, getting equipment which could be shared by 40 or 50 people. It's really difficult for academics to get that on their research grant funding. The department and the faculty doesn't have money to cover that, but it would make sense. So we've got a lab kit fund now within Imperial, so you can put forward some proposals for this. And I think funders are looking towards this. How can we have greater sharing? And on the 8 Ways link, there's more things about nationally the resources that are available and the different facilities that you can access for a small charge. And the funders really can, I think there was a fundamental change when the Wellcome Concordat came out, a fundamental change in academic perceptions about this. It's taken much more seriously now that it's really required by the Concordat. So Zafar and I had an Imperial College Lab Suppliers Forum, so we looked at our life science spend and the 35 main suppliers there, just to keep them up to date with what we were doing and how we might be able to help them as a university. We've got lots of people who know how to do life cycle analyses on products for like master's projects. So we were asking how can we help them? So we're not just asking them to fulfill more and more for the net positive tool, that we want them to give a lot more information. We want to be able to support them in doing that. Next slide, please, Will. So we were very lucky that we had somebody in our computing department who looked at our spend data and made a carbon emission analysis tool. So I ran a report on my department, and travel was actually 54% of our department's spend. We've got people going to the Galapagos Islands, the Amazon rainforest, and Malaysia to look at biodiversity projects. There's a huge amount of travel involved, much more than I had anticipated. And our lab spend is about 33%. All of the other categories are quite insignificant at 2 or 3%. So it's really useful to see department by department. We've got 28 departments across the college. You can see departmental spend and cut this in lots of different ways to look at our scope 3 procurement data. Next slide, please. And then once you bought equipment, how you use it has a really big impact. So I've been working with freezer sustainability since about 2008, and it's a massive cost to the department. So for us, during COVID, it went up to £238,000 a year just to keep our things cold. So we buy energy efficient freezers, we gatekeep what comes in. So people are not allowed to buy fridges and freezers without prior consent. So we've usually got a 1 in, 1 out policy. So if it's broken, you can replace it. We encourage defrost and decant, and we've really shifted our footprint down for the ULT freezers down to 4,400 kilowatts per annum. But we're keeping going with that because we could get down to 3,300. We've got a rolling program of replacing the ULT freezers with more energy efficient freezers, and then making sure that they're looked after properly. So in the My Green Lab Freezer Challenge last year, we found out that we were saving 555 kilowatts a day by the practices that we did. And it's about £20,000 a year that transferred into. It's also really difficult. There are eco-design regulations for lots of things in Europe to make sure that it's manufactured well, but laboratory equipment falls under that. Luckily, freezers don't, just over the threshold of 200,000 units sold per annum in the EU. And hopefully by the end of this year, that legislation will go through so that it has to be manufactured in an efficient way. Next slide, please, Will. The other big thing that you consider is when we had autoclaves at the end of life, and we really looked, we spent a year analysing what we were doing, what kind of cycles we were using, how we were staffing all of that. So we had a complete staff restructure, reviewed all of our safety and looked at our building systems. And what we found was that we could tap into our process chilled water supply to help cool the chambers down. They take a lot of water to cool the chambers back down to temperature so they're safe to open. And it was a really expensive project. We started this back in 2018, and it was the first procurement tender that went out that asked for energy and water consumption. We couldn't use the data in the end because there was a lot of resistance from the companies. So it's really great to see in that sort of 6 intervening years that companies have really taken on board. They really need to provide this information. So we had to discount that as part of the tender, but we did hold them to account, and we put water meters in. The water meters per machine were £350, and we saved that money in the first week because there was a line code fault in the autoclave, and it was letting by 10,000 litres of water, and we would never have picked that up in the whole of the lifetime operation. So really look, when you're doing a big infrastructure project, what metering can you put in place to monitor things? So it's not just about buying it and putting it in, it's how do you run it for its own lifetime. And what we found was we could work with the company that installed them. So our media cycles were taking 1,500 litres of water per cycle, and we got that down to 300. So really looking down the line and how you're running at. Next slide, please. Our next project is looking at our plant growth rooms. We've got 70 controlled environment rooms, and 30 of those have got plants in. So we've got wheat, rice, barley, medicargo, Arabidopsis, a whole range of different things. And it's been tricky to get the money to do this, but we've been funded centrally through the college because we'll make massive savings on our energy. So that's our next project. So I'd say if you've got a really diverse asset portfolio, pick something like the freezers or autoclaves first because they're high energy items, and then work through each thing rather than trying to focus on doing lots of things at the same time. It takes more work than you think. So focus on one thing and get that done, and then move on to the next one. Next slide, please, Will. From Chris's carbon emissions analysis tool, the top graph there is over from 2018 to 2023, and you can just see a very gradual decline in the total electricity consumption of one of the buildings that we work in, so Alexander Fleming building. So it's gone down from 3,600 kilowatt hours, average daily peak, to 1,000. And that's also to do with the building improvements. But because of the way it's metered, we don't know how much was the building and how much is it that we've improved our freezers and our autoclaves. But we do have autoclaves in this building. The graph below shows just the daily peak. So you can see in the middle of the day, that's when everybody's in, when most electricity is being used. So it impacts your scope 3 in terms of what you're buying, but also if you're buying energy efficient and you use it well, you're also reducing your electricity consumption and improving your scope 2 emissions. Next slide, please. So look at what you're bringing in, how you use it, and then what you're going to do at the end of life. So we've got lots of plastic recycling schemes. We do centralised repairs in our department. The cost of getting engineers in is quite a lot, and the carbon footprint of their travel to site as well. So we're organising lots of repairs centrally for the 1,000 people that we've got in our department. We sell some of our items as well to Unigreen or Wasteless, and we offer to some of our companies, so for safety cabinets, we let them come and raid for parts that we no longer need so they can keep somebody else's machines working. And we do lots of donations as well through Warpit. And we've got really extensive waste routes within Imperial, so we make really best use of those. Next slide, please, Will. That's great. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Imperial College, and we're going to hand over to Antonio from LUPC. We see a lot of questions already coming in through the Q&A function, so I'm going to encourage the Imperial panelist hosts. If you can go into the Q&A function, click on type answer and start to answer. We've got a lot of technical and procurement related questions for the Imperial College, so if you can start to answer those, that will be really, really useful. Over to you, Antonio.
Hi everyone, I hope I'm unmuted. Please nod. I'm kidding. Okay, so my presentation will talk a little bit about my organization and procurement, and also focus in how I am trying to weave responsible procurement and sustainability into a current tender process. So a lot of this will chime with the presentations that you've heard before. And just please note that LUPC is not a, LUPC is not an institution. We're not a university. We are a not-for-profit buying group, and we help universities and other non-for-profit organizations get better value by working together to purchase goods and service at scale. So most of our members are universities, colleges, museums, and research institutes in and around London. What we all have in common is the need for reliable and cost-effective ethical procurement. So we are also part of a wider collaboration called the UK UPC, which is the UK Purchasing Consortia, which is made up of 8 regional consortia that you can see here. And together we work and support around 1,100 member institutions across the UK. This translates into collectively managing circa £2.4 billion of spend each year amongst almost 1,500 suppliers. So this kind of aggregation gives us some real buying power and the ability to drive positive change, whether that's improving sustainability, reducing environmental impact, or influencing supply chains, which I think is what we're all trying to do here. For the rest of today's session, I will focus on procurement in the STEM Ed and Labs categories that I manage, which is an area where we can all make a difference. So, as I mentioned earlier, we don't go out and tender for individual contracts with individual suppliers. We tender for frameworks. Frameworks are, I guess, big aggregations or supply lists of different suppliers that member universities and institutions can call off from and place individual contracts themselves without having to run a full tender exercise. So it's almost like we've done all the tendering and the heavy lifting beforehand, and institutions like different universities can come in and purchase them. So what you can see here is a general scope, and within that, STEM Ed and Labs is the area that I manage. And this area consists of around 12 supplier frameworks. Each framework will be split up into different lots, which are kind of subcategories or specialisms that aggregate suppliers that lean into a certain area. If any of you are familiar with the UK UPC world, you'll see that some of these might be quite, you might have already used or call off some of these call-offs under these frameworks. And just coming soon will be UK UPC's first exclusively medical STEM Ed agreement. So UK UPC is usually focused on research and education, but we are inaugurating soon a new medical simulation and training equipment framework made up of the 4 specialisms that you can see on the left. So now let's take a closer look at the agreement that I manage, which is called General Lab Equipment. This framework was designed to meet the needs of university and research labs. It covers the kind of kit that you'd expect in a multi-purpose scientific lab, things like autoclaves, ovens, fridges, and ULT fridges, etc. It also includes higher spec equipment like incubators, ultracentrifuges, and freeze dryers. The current framework, which is close to expiring, is made up of 10 lots in total. And this includes 12 lots, sorry, that includes a one-stop shop, which kind of aggregates supplies that can cut across all the various specialisms and lots. So as I said before, this agreement is fully compliant with all the procurement regulations and is designed to save time, money, and hassle, while also aligning with objectives like sustainability and sourcing. So now a quick word about how the frameworks like this are structured. So what you can see in this rather migraine-inducing slide, which I will attempt to zoom in on, are the makeup of the different lots. So for example, in lot 5, which I'm hovering over now, which is environmental storage lab fridges and freezers, you'll see there are a number of particular and distinct types of equipment that you can order. And this carries on across various different lots, such as centrifuges. You can see there's quite a wealth and quite a detailed split of different types of centrifuges that are offered. Environmental control is kind of like a more generic appellative that attempts to combine anything that uses temperature in order to output a scientific result or reading. So you've got things like dry or workflow really. So you've got things like freeze dryers, incubators, plasma thawers, etc. And the reason that we structure things this way is to help suppliers bid for only what they're good at, which would improve quality and also competition. And for our buyers, it also means better choice, better value, and a more relevant shortlist of suppliers that can actually provide what they are good at and what they can source at good commercial, good commercial rates. So here, it's a big part of putting together a framework like this is understanding the customer and making sure we select suppliers that understand the customer. So we recently surveyed lab users on their priorities, and top of the list was, no surprise, equipment price, closely followed by warranty options and the availability of specific brands. Sustainability did make it into the top 5, which is a positive sign, but it's clear that responsible procurement isn't yet top of mind for many users. Now, this isn't really a criticism, it's really a reality check. Institutional strategies might prioritize social value and ethics on paper, but day-to-day lab purchase decisions are still often led by price and practicality. And as our colleagues who have just presented, I'm sure they understand this, and the work that the folks today are doing is trying to bridge that gap. So part of our job is to help close that gap and to make sure values like sustainability are considered right alongside performance and cost. Now, in terms of the general specification, I'm getting now into the technical elements of procurement that some of you might recognize. So every framework we manage has a general specification, which is kind of like a set of baseline expectations for all framework suppliers that they must meet no matter what goods or services they're offering. This includes obviously things like safety, compliance, and value for money, but it also covers wider principles like carbon reduction, waste management, and sustainable packaging. So I designed this tender to avoid ending up with framework suppliers who only want to push the products that they want to sell. And we're trying to kind of reward and select suppliers who think beyond merely the transaction and what they can get out of our customers. We really want suppliers who understand the bigger picture and want to contribute to the institutions and obviously to the wider community as well. So we asked framework suppliers to demonstrate action in areas like sustainable product design, low energy and water usage, packaging and waste reduction, and of course support for the circular economy, which chimes a lot with getting the stuff that Alison was talking about getting more value out of the assets. Now, on the social value side, we've encouraged collaboration with institutional procurement and research teams. Some organizations align with frameworks like HE-TOMS, which is a higher education themes, outcomes, and measures framework, which helps institutions demonstrate the social value of their activities, whilst others might follow the Social Value Act. But in essence, what we want to do is select suppliers that understand and support these initiatives. Okay, so here, so in the procurement, you've got several elements that converge to kind of select the suppliers. Here, I'm going to be talking about the award questionnaire. So what you can see on the left is a live award questionnaire, which I designed with the input of my stakeholders, where we isolate we group the different value levers that we want the suppliers to demonstrate, which will be evaluated. And as you can see from the red ring here, responsible procurement and environmental sustainability really is highly represented. We can go into the details of this later, but if you can look at this column, the weightings are at 15%, which really does demonstrate that. And we want to demonstrate to the market that we're only interested in suppliers that can really demonstrate value and how they're working in these areas. So, so the previous slide showed the importance, I think, of extending the life of lab assets, and a big chunk of the questionnaire focuses in a more granular way so that suppliers can explain how they will provide value in this area to us. So now, in terms of sustainability, we've also meshed it into the pricing schedule. So each of these three images represents an element of the pricing schedule, which is a list price that eventually will be available to members so that they can not only see the models and the goods that the suppliers are offering, but so that they can also see the kilowatt at set point and the standard warranty in years that is included with each of these items. So for example, going from left to right, in lot 5, which is environmental storage, we all know that ULTs are extremely, can be very energy, energy intensive. And we've set up a price list made up of a mix of supplier products and also predetermined products that come out of the data. And next to these, the suppliers will be inputting these values next to the price. And this is so that a customer can have a look and maybe filter through these columns and get a good understanding of which brands or which models are more or less energy intensive. And together with this, I'm sorry, I'm going to zoom out slightly as well. There is another element of the same pricing schedule here, where we actually ask suppliers to propose what would be their the lowest whole life cost model. So if you just take a moment to read this, this is where suppliers will be putting in these cells the equipment that they nominate that can meet this this criteria. And it's really important for suppliers to find the balance between product price and the value of an asset. And we all know that sometimes cheaper products, unfortunately, tend to be more less cost effective in the whole run. So next to this, again, the supplier will put in the model, the brand, the customer will find the information of kilowatt set point and standard warranty. And then here the supplier will summarize the top 5 reasons why they are nominating these products as more efficient in terms of whole life cost. So this could be, for example, that they have cheaper consumables or lower cost consumables or reusable consumables. It could mean that they have a certain number of accreditations, such as a Mike Green Lab accreditation. It could mean that they have been evaluated or scored highly on certain environmental credentials. And this again is attempts to present to customers and potential customers more information that will allow them to at least, if not really select a product, at least start an internal conversation with stakeholders so that they can, get a good grip as to what they want, because often stakeholders just see what's in front of them. They want the lowest product at that time, and they're not really thinking ahead or looking at how that could impact, the wider university or the college and the energy costs and water costs, etc. Now, once the framework is live, there will be a buyer's guide. And in that buyer's guide, I've got plenty of ideas of what we'll be adding. So for example, in the buyer's guide, I am preparing a little kind of like a calculator tool that will attempt to kind of further extrapolate and provide information on energy usage. So in this example, for example, in centrifuges, each supplier will provide the average kilowatt set point, as you've seen before, and then through a formula, depending on whatever the current cost of electricity is, it will output more or less on electricity costs per day or per year. So, for example, things like ULTs will have a relevant value for a year because they'll be switched on, 24/7, 365. But for example, centrifugal evaporators or microcentrifuges, etc., will be used in, segments of 5, 10, 60 minutes. And this will just kind of guide the conversation and give customers a little bit of a better understanding of what it is they're buying, so that when they compare different products that are presented to them by the suppliers, they can make a better informed decision. So next is the RP Hub. So again, LUPC is a consortia, so we do collective buying. We have a portfolio of about 115 members, I believe. And so we have created this in-house tool, which is a free platform for our members that centralizes responsible procurement data, making it easier for LUPC members to discover, assess, and compare and monitor suppliers based on social, environmental, and governance criteria, or ESG. So it offers a structured path for suppliers as well, so that they can focus on continuous improvement in ESG. And this really did evolve from the LUPC's former supplier questionnaire. And thanks to Mags Shapiro, who is LUPC's responsible procurement lead, she actually took this on as, I think, her own project and converted all the good stuff that we had been doing previously into one fully fledged digital platform. This will enable not only users to track and improve ESG standards across the supply chains, but also allow suppliers to monitor their own improvement. And this is provided free to all members, and it's free to all suppliers. So there are no costs involved, and it's quite flexible. It can allow other reports from other bodies to be input into this tool. So through the RP Hub, ethical procurement as well has a really big big say, and it becomes more transparent and manageable, and ultimately we hope will benefit people and communities. So how is it used? So when a supplier, so from the supplier side, when a supplier is appointed as a successful supplier to LUPC, they need to sign up to what is called the Sustained Supply Chain Code of Conduct as part of their agreement. And within the first 90 days of their framework, we require them to complete a supplier due diligence questionnaire, which is then hosted on this RP Hub. At the onboarding stage, we will work with suppliers on the strategic approach. Once a supplier submits their questionnaire data, our responsible procurement lead at LUPC will review the information. And if any issues are identified, we will work with the suppliers to agree on corrective actions. This will form part of their formal corrective action plan, which will be carried out by my colleagues at LUPC. From here, I, as a contract manager, will hold 6 monthly contract management meetings where this will be an itemized element, and we will be going through. I'll be working with Mags to look at where there are gaps, so that during my contract meetings, I can kind of manage and not really pressure suppliers, but just monitor where they are, and if they can continue to demonstrate all the value that they put in their original bid in terms of responsible procurement. So LUPC is also committed to protecting labour rights throughout the supply chains. And in labs, it's very difficult to kind of get to those supply chains upstream, because so many, the wealth of components within each piece of equipment, can be mind-boggling. So to help mitigate this, we are affiliates of Electronics Watch, which you probably would have heard of, which carries out work-centered monitoring and focuses on the electronic sector. And this really is handy because it helps support grievous mechanisms and remedies when labour rights abuses occur. We're also proud to be affiliates of Unseen, which is a UK-based organisation that provides a modern slavery hotline, which is a confidential route for suppliers in UK supply chains to report concerns and seek help in terms of modern slavery. So together, these partnerships help us go beyond compliance and help us to deliver meaningful protections to workers, both here in the UK and across global supply chains. And so what do the suppliers see? So this is a screenshot, it's a screen grab of the questionnaire, which is obviously on a live digital platform. Each question has a section, and within each section may be a number of questions. And we've kind of pre-digested the questions into kind of capable, multiple choice queries because suppliers really we want to also reduce the hassle and the duplication that they might be experiencing by the various other reporting tools that are out there. But what's cool about this is that suppliers can actually then upload their own documentation, which is then on tap for customers to see. So here, this screenshot is an example of the kind of output that a member can access through their membership with LUPC. So on screen, for example, you can see a sample question here about net zero target. We're trying to keep them streamlined and easy to digest. And then you can see how a supplier has responded. Members can also view the category trend of different suppliers on that framework, and which will show how others have answered that same question so that they can compare and assess what supplier really hits the targets that their stakeholders want. Oops, sorry, that was my bad. Let me just go back. So what does this do? It really provides a tailored evaluation of their responses, and it provides a useful resource to support improvement. And last but not least is each supplier will have a proposed action plan which will be reviewed by MAGs at LUPC. The report is also color-coded by question using our own responsible procurement maturity matrix. So it's easy to see where the suppliers are doing well and where the suppliers have room to grow. So this process gives members valuable oversight while giving suppliers a clear, constructive guidance that they can act on. So I think that was it from me. Thank you very much, and I welcome questions later. I will now leave to Dylan from My Green Labs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, just sharing my screen there. Okay, all right. Just checking you can continue to share. You can see that? Yeah, okay, great. Well, yeah, thank you very much, Antonio, and thank you to Action Sustainability for having us on today. Yes, today I'm going to be taking you through our two flagship programs, primarily focus on the My Green Lab Act Eco Label. And the aim of this call, especially as I saw so many questions popping up around, the confusion around sustainable procurement. How do you compare from supplier to supplier, from product to product? What is the solution and the framework by which we, as the entire lab industry and academia and pharma and biotech all together, build a culture of sustainability, not just in procurement, but in our best practices as well, in those simple actions every single day in the lab. So I'll give you an overview of what we do, and then I will also briefly overview our certification, because I do believe that is one of the biggest actions you can take as a lab to not only action your sustainable procurement, but also the other behaviors surrounding equipment usage, experimental design, etc. Beyond that as well, sorry, I'm seeing a hand up, or sorry, that's okay, I'll continue. Beyond that as well, I will also go into our actual solution for sustainable procurement, a third-party verified and standardized approach to lab product sustainability. Okay, so just a brief overview of who we are. My Green Lab is a global nonprofit with, I said it already, a mission to build a global culture of sustainability in science. Now, what is culture? Culture is those best practices that live on between people in labs, right? Not just one person in the lab taking one action. It's the repeatability of that action. It's the ease of that action. It's the way that that action lives on between everyone in the lab, such that when that person in the lab moves on, that behavior still exists. Someone comes in and fills in that role and goes, oh, this is how we do sustainability here, right? And sustainability is a complex and ever-evolving dynamic beast. How do we tackle it from all the different angles? And the answer is with a mixture of education, certification tools, and as well as just bringing the scientific community together to do better together, because that's how you get that cumulative impact. And I'm going to say the words cumulative impact a couple of times today, so keep those in your head.
Dylan, just a very, very quick thing. So we can sort of see the view that you're supposed to see. So if you can go into the sort of slide share mode, if that's okay.
How that happens. Thank you very much for letting me know. Give me a sec here.
No worries, take your time. Okay.
I'm just going to share my screen my desktop. Hey, does that work, or am I sharing the wrong one again?
We can see your notes as well.
How about that?
That's all right. Thank you.
It's correct. Okay, thank you. Okay, so just went over who My Green Lab are, and thank you for the patience there. Impact Laboratories. I work for Impact Laboratories. We are the delivery arm of My Green Lab. We sit as the delivery method for the certification and the verification guide for the third-party verification of the My Green Lab certification. Our sales and certification team sit on the Impact Laboratories side, whereas the standard setting and technical team sit on the My Green Lab side. As well as that, the ACT Eco label that I referred to before, and we'll go into in further detail, is third-party verified and standardized by a separate organization known as Verico, who are located on the east coast of the United States. And that ensures true third-party verification and standardization across the comparisons of products. Now, I talked about product to product, right? How do you get that independent certification, those comparisons? And that's one of the things that leveraging Verico as a partner has allowed us to do. Now, I will go into the two certifications you see at the top left there, but as you can see, there's a lot of words on this slide and a lot of programs as well. We won't spend too long here, but you can see that we have that combination of education, certification, and bringing everyone together. Now, on that topic of education, we have the My Green Lab Ambassador Program and Accredited Professionals Program that I also will very shortly touch on. But those are real actions that you as an individual can take. Our Ambassador Program is a free online course that gives you a baseline overview of lab sustainability. It covers things like purchasing and easy wins, etc. But it's also something for you to get a certificate, join a community, be part of our community as well. Beyond that as well, our Accredited Professionals Program literally has a procurement module. It's something that you can really focus on the areas where you want to in lab sustainability, or just develop your personal knowledge and really take that deep dive. On the engagement side of things as well, the Freezer Challenge sits as a free challenge throughout the first half of the year, where we encourage and really focus on that cold storage. It's been brought up a couple of times by Imperial and by LUPC so far. Cold storage is a very impactful area of lab operations. And beyond that as well, talking about bringing people together, we're actually mobilizing the entire pharma industry, well, as much of it as we have collaborations with. We're already working with over 40 of the 50 biggest pharma organizations on the My Green Lab certification, and we're getting many of them to leverage their supply chain, their CDMOs, their CMOs, all of that repeatable drug delivery experimentation that's just getting copy pasted across many, many different labs. And if we can get one of those labs to make one change and copy paste that across that entire, even just one of those organizations and one of those supply chains, again, cumulative impact. We are driving positive change together, and that's driven by the very, very top of the food chain there as well. So yeah, just giving you an idea of, summarizing, if you will, some of the quote problems that we've seen throughout the past hour is, labs are adopting sustainability measures overwhelmingly. Now, this is a survey we did in association with Agilent and Frost & Sullivan across 500 different lab managers across the globe. And really looking at that top bullet point there, labs surveyed have already adopted sustainability measures, but there is a stopping point there. I've seen questions about it in the chat, this framework, this idea of how do we standardize the approach? How do we spend loads of time and effort on this and make sure that at the end of that, we look back and we have made a positive change that is actually meaningful and ultimately saves us a buck or two as well. This needs to be something that has positive impact, both sustainability wise but as has been alluded to before, from a cost perspective as well. And I'll get back to the bottom two bullet points there, but really the focus there is, the solution is the My Green Lab certification there, that we have the international gold standard for the lab sustainability best practices, and we guide you on that journey to do so. So just looking at the My Green Lab certification, we have over 14 different areas that we survey. We have an online audit platform, so you log on as a lab lead, submit your data, submit your answers to the questionnaire, and actually giving you a little bit of more of a guide on that as well. We do engage over half of the lab as well. Now, why do we do that? I think that's is really one thing that is so impactful about the My Green Lab certification, bringing everyone together, cumulative impact, right? If you get over half of your lab to get engaged on this survey and get engaged on making those best practices, first of all, you get more cumulative impact, right? And we've seen that in the results of the certification before, where the higher the participation across the lab, it leads to the ability to increase the score more, to make more of an impact cumulatively. But at the same time, there's the other side of cumulative impact, which is kind of covering bases, right? If you have a 4-person lab and 2 people fill out the survey, then it might be that they point out 5 things each that they need to be improved from a sustainability perspective. But when you actually draw a Venn diagram of those 2 things, you get an overlap of 3 of them. And actually, there are different things being pointed out by different people in the lab. So bringing people together covers your bases. It also gives you the bigger picture and gives you bigger impact. So once the lab users have filled out a 5-minute engagement survey and the lab lead has filled out a slightly more intensive and detailed survey regarding the full lab operations, you can then view your impact estimator tool and see where you're actually going to go, in terms of the equipment that you have in the lab. How much is that? How much is our certification? Could it hypothetically impact your lab, and how much you could save down to the energy level, down to the dollar amount in approximate terms. And based on the feedback to that survey, we will then give you the advice. Our wonderful certifications team will give you some advice based on that survey and show you how to then implement that advice over the next 3 to 6 months. So then that's stage 2, implement that advice, track yourself on the impact estimator and audit platform, and then come back to us in 3 to 6 months and take that survey again, right? You've done your baseline, you've had your advice, you've taken some actions, and then you take your certification. We'll give you a score out of 100. That'll be your My Green Lab certification. And I've got to the end of the certification and only halfway through the slide. How does that work? Well, of course, you're not going to score 100 the first time. There'll be more advice and more impact given to you from our team, and that covers purchasing, green chemistry. What products are you bringing in? How are you passing your continuous improvement up through the supply chain as well? And so that's where this leads into the ACT Eco label, which I'll get into in a second. Now, the certification lasts 2 years, and you will be invited to come back and do the certification again after 2 years. And it's all about that journey of continuous improvement that I was on about there before. When you get your certification, this is just an example of Thermo Fisher. You can see that you get a score out of 100, and based on that score, you will get either bronze, silver, gold, platinum, or green certified. Just giving you a case study as well. Everyone likes numbers. We're all scientists here. This was just a pilot of 3 labs done by GSK, and they were able to realize almost 15 times I really wish they might round up that number, almost 15 times the return on investment across the labs, across the energy, across the CO2 emissions, and across water saving as well. So that just gives you an idea of the My Green Lab certification. But going back to it and going back to that, purchasing and green chemistry side of things as well, thinking about what you're bringing into your lab, right? Lots of time we started this certification and people said, you keep telling us we need a green lab, we need to buy more green lab products. What's a green lab product? You can't have a green lab without green lab products, right? And it's really confusing, right? So whether you're looking at pipette tips and one manufacturer says it's part of their eco range and another one says it's part of their eco green range or something like that, it all is ultimately meaningless as a procurement decision, right? And so that's really what, going back to this survey, it shows, right, that 85% of vendors said, of the people that were surveyed said, we need our vendors to guide us on this journey. But over 90% of the people surveyed said, we need independent certification of these products. I need a label that tells me, or I need a framework that tells me, this pipette tip box is more sustainable than that one. This freezer is more sustainable than that one. And it needs to be held to a consistent standard. So that is where I will very conveniently segue into our ACT Eco label. Now, if you go on our website, you look at our Act Eco labels, you can see the database of every single product that has ever been labeled by us. This is a third-party verified and standardized framework by which every single lab product can be held to. We have over 1,700 lab products on there from roughly 50 manufacturers and about 80 different manufacturers in total across both programs. I say both programs because we have just updated the label, and so the majority of the labels coming out will be on the new label, but there are 1,700 labels out with this one. So I will just give you a brief overview of this, some scores from 1 to 10, an overview of the product content, the before, let's say, the product content and manufacturing facility, the use case, energy and water, and then the end of life, the recyclability, etc. of it. And any innovative practices that are included in that. And moving forward as well, we are updating the label to give you a little bit more real data as well, and really define where the impact is in each of these categories. So you can see at the manufacturing level, there is things like renewable energy and renewable electricity, but also best practices, that culture of sustainability that's already there. Things like ISO 14001. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. This is highlighting what manufacturers have already done. It's a commitment to transparency and continuous improvement, because this is a baseline. This is them telling you how sustainable their product is right now. And as you continue to look at different competitors, etc., you can see how it scores up, either at the total score, which is a weighted total of all of these scores you see here, or at the category that matters most to you. This is at the SKU level. Now, looking at our database here, as I said, you can see all of the Act 1 labels there, and this is just an example product, a Griner Bio on pipette tip. And you can see not only the scores, but also the justification behind them. So you can see more details about how they achieved that score, and things like product content. You can see this is made from FSC certified material. You can see exactly how much of it as well. And so that gives you an idea of, exactly what is important from a framework perspective. In terms of why do manufacturers go ahead and do this? This is a great case study we did with LabCon. If you go on LinkedIn and you follow LabCon, well, they like to sing about their ACT labels a lot. They're a very sustainability-minded organization, and that's reflected by the fact they have over 25% of their LabCon manufactured products already ACT eco-labeled. And really, this quote speaks for itself, so I will just read it out word for word. Turns our sustainability program into a measurable advantage and helps us stand out in the global lab consumables market. We have seen that sentiment reflected across other manufacturers as well. So I appreciate I'm a little bit short on time. I've only got 3 or 4 slides left. Just briefly, as I mentioned, our ambassador program as well. Whilst it's great for you to take on the certification as a group and as a procurement strategy to integrate ACT in, as an individual, do get the ambassador program done, and do tag me on LinkedIn with your certificate when you get that, because I would love to see more and more ambassadors come in. We have 9,000 ambassadors in 90 countries. And we do regular webinars for free with the ambassador community, just providing sustainability and innovation in the industry and bringing people together to have a chat. There's also a Teams chat of all the ambassadors where you can troubleshoot your sustainability issues. So you're very, very welcome. As well, if you want to take a deeper dive into lab sustainability, I did mention our accredited professionals program. I definitely think that is a great idea for anyone in this call who cares about procurement, which is obviously why you're here today, to at least have a look at the procurement module, if not the rest of them as well, because all of these things will then diagram into each other in terms of importance in sustainability. So summing up my my slightly longer than expected presentation, what are some quick actions that you can take as a as a lab? In terms of ACT, just pick your top 3 most purchased products and compare them on the ACT database. If they don't exist on the ACT database, tell your suppliers to get ACT labels, get them in touch with myself, and use the database to also find, better, more sustainable alternatives, etc. I definitely recommend getting your lab certified, becoming an ambassador and accredited professionals as well, and join our free newsletter to keep up with innovations in the industry. Promise this is my last slide now, but we at My Green Lab as a non-profit are grateful to all of our sponsors. I'm sure you can see some familiar faces here. Thank you very much, everyone, for the time, and have a great day.
Thank you. That was a great whistle-stop tour of the ACT Eco label and My Green Lab. I'm going to get all of the panel, if you can come back on screen. I can see, so you will have seen delegates who have got their queries and questions in. Thank you so much to the panel in the background. You've been answering all of those queries live as the other panel members have been speaking. Dylan, as you went last, I'm just going to go in that order because there are a couple of queries right at the bottom for you. Starting with Migraine Lab, does that cover environments like dry labs, lasers, and workshop spaces? And that's one query for you.
The short answer is yes. Whether it's a clinical lab, a dry lab, yes, the initial, like first ever migraine lab certification was probably more designed around a biochemistry lab, but not every single area is a compulsory, scoring. You essentially will
Yeah.
answer questions based on what's important to your lab, and you will disqualify certain areas of like, oh, well, we don't have any green chemistry, so we would, we're not going to answer any questions on that. That won't affect your score, of course. It's you're scored on what you can answer, not what you can't. And definitely worth, yeah, if you have any more questions about that, please reach out to me.
All right, there was another one around the costs of the ACT Eco label and considerations for SMEs. Is there a different cost for SMEs, or I don't know what the pricing structure looks like, but that was one question.
Yeah, so the costing structure has very recently, with the launch of the new label, been updated in order to tackle exactly that, right? And the idea being that we could give a realistic cost to one of the biggest organizations that work with us if they wanted to do their entire portfolio at the same time as someone saying, "Hey, we only make 3 products, and can we get them all ACT labeled?" So the costing is scaled based on volume, and therefore, the more that you do, let's say from one facility, will there's going to be overlap in the process. We're going to be copy pasting all the facility data across all those labels, and again, multiple similar products as well. So, any questions about costing, please do get in contact with me. And I could honestly talk about it for about 20 minutes if you wanted me to. So I don't want to take this.
That's cool. And I've put the contacts for the respective panelists in the chat box as well. For you, Antonio, there are around 2 questions around the responsible procurement hub. So I'm going to sort of club it up together. One was around, so we've got one of the delegates trying to access the information on the responsible procurement hub and register an account, but it sort of shows that the registration is only for LUPC suppliers. So that's about accessing the hub. But secondly, can you sort of break down how the responsible procurement hub helps with sort of ethical procurement as well?
Yeah, so the Responsible Procurement Hub covers a number of criteria within the questionnaire. So the questionnaire really, to make things easy, and it's such a rich subject, and the suppliers have to like log on to many different systems. We tried to kind of pre-digest everything into questions where that suppliers choose an outcome and then choose an answer, sorry, and then they will upload any documentation that proves this. So for example, we allow that the RP hub allows suppliers to upload any of their other kind of reports or any of the certifications. It also kind of allows customers and users to look at their answers and really to engage and to start a conversation. So whilst resources are limited and suppliers will be providing key information on what they do, users should then look at that, talk to their stakeholders, and just initiate a conversation with suppliers. I mean, that's the best way to get information out of them. It's just an instrument for you to kind of direct your thoughts and see what they've got on paper, and then create a richer conversation afterwards, because that is what the suppliers are hired for. They're meant to provide advice as well.
Yeah, and that's brilliant. And are you saying the access is not just for suppliers? You've got member organizations who can also sort of log onto it and see the sort of evidence and data about responsible sourcing that's sort of uploaded on there.
Only for LUPC members, to my knowledge, as I put in one of the
Okay, LUPC members. There was a question, and I think Imperial, so you've sort of answered this. So the audience were interested in knowing, because we talked heavily around the environmental criteria, carbon waste, water, etc. And they were interested in understanding what's been done around modern slavery, so the social aspects, modern slavery, human rights breaches, child labor, because of course you've got those implications on working conditions and supply chains as well. So the answer for everybody today, Imperial has said, so they're also working around this area. They're definitely actively asking questions around human rights breaches, child labor, modern slavery within their procurement tenders. And of course, if there is insufficient information about not just policy but due diligence, then that is an automatic fail. So of course, if you know that's not being done by the supplier. So I'm just reading up some of the queries and some of the responses there as well. Alison, thank you for answering. There was a query around more information on the fridge freezers and energy calculations. To the participant over there, Alison, you've put that in there. There was another query about the information on water saving, on water consumption with autoclaves. To those of you who had that query, you will be getting a copy of the slide decks as well. And for everyone's knowledge, I have put the link to Alison's webinar recording around the work on autoclaves in the chat box too. Looking at some of the active queries, this one's for LUPC. Looking at greener and more sustainable products often comes at a premium. Money costs more. How does LEPC support its members in sort of balancing that budget constraints, environmental, social, sustainability responsibilities as well?
This is an excellent question. I'm going to try to speed through it because of time. It's a really long and convoluted response. And also, please note that we are in the middle of the evaluation process. So I really cannot discuss this, but I invite the requester, I think I wrote down her name because I like the question so much. I think it's Daniela Ganga, to reach out to me once the framework is live and I can explain, because I did design a commercial instrument that was created to score suppliers the highest on those whole life cost items that they would have pre-submitted. So I did weave that in, but I cannot disclose this at the moment because it's quite sensitive commercial information.
All right. And for Daniela's benefit, we've put the contacts for Antonio in the chat box as well, so you can sort of reach out. From Imperial procurement side, so there was a query for Zafar. You've sort of answered it. But what that query was, do you sort of see an increase in procurement of items from that 2.5% green attributes where the same product is available from other sources? Is there a sort of price difference? So, Suffer Excellence, so you said you're not currently focused just on the sort of cost element. The priority is ensuring that the items already classified as green by the supplier are properly uploaded into your system. So that's Jagger, the system that you're using. Not all suppliers sort of complete the steps, so you are putting in efforts, and those efforts are centered around supplier development. So you're bringing your supply chain along on the journey rather than risk dumping sustainability requirements on them. So supply development, continuous improvement, Imperial College, that's what you're doing. So using metrics to track progress, supporting the supply chain and getting those green classified items uploaded correctly as well. We just got 4 minutes more, so I'm just running through the sort of answered and the sort of live questions. There's something about weighting and scoring. Is there any weighting or support for equipment being maintainable, maintained, and repairable? So, thinking about the waste hierarchy rather than disposing. So, weighting around maintenance and repairability by end users rather than by engineers who will need to travel. So, that's the travel implications, and you've got the call out charge as well. I think, Antonio, this might be for you because of the frameworks.
Yes, yes, yes. This is a really tricky subject. I think consortia in the past has tried to put together servicing frameworks without much success because, as you mentioned, there are travel implications, there are geographical implications, there are contractual implications within each institution, and it's very difficult to kind of pre-select and pre-qualify suppliers in the future because we don't know what the requirements will be. However, there is a strong weighting in the responsible procurement award questionnaire section. And also, once the framework is live, you will see the specification, and the specification has specific kind of advice and instructions, which essentially are that customers should go to the suppliers beforehand, not be afraid of talking to suppliers because there's no obligation to buy, and discuss their exact kind of requirements and what are the products that may or may not kind of benefit from kind of a separate servicing contract or a servicing agreement throughout the life of the asset. So all this, basically the short answer is it's included in the scope of the framework, but it isn't parceled as a commoditized price good. So basically, before you buy, think about what you want and engage with the suppliers, extract the information about servicing that you need, and then make an educated commercial choice.
Brilliant. This one's, I think, for Will. I think you've sort of answered it, but there was a question around how do you actually calculate the tricky measures mentioned in Scope 3? And I think you said something about a hybrid approach, if you want to just, cover that.
Yeah, so traditionally we've used Heskett, which is been designed by Nottingham Trent, and it's essentially sets out different emission factors for different procurement categories. That was updated in 22, and because we've had a lot of inflation, there's been a bit of questions as to how accurate that is. I mean, there's also a lot of uncertainty around a spend-based methodology, but this has been added to it. And so for us, the big area has been how can we improve the data quality we're receiving, and through Net Positive, we've been able to access actual data from our suppliers. This is self-reported, but they do have a verification process in place as well, and that's really given us a bit more confidence, well, a fair bit more confidence in the data we're getting in from our suppliers. So at the moment, we're using a hybrid. So we're using actual data where it's available and then spend where it's not. So
that's good. And there was one, and Zafar, you've sort of replied to that as well. You've got a few suppliers who are sort of uploaded on Traeger, not all of them are. And you've said that the ones who are not registered, you sort of are typically engaged in providing services, capital equipment, or, bespoke custom tangibles. So they will be expected to report through the Net Positives Futures tool. So additionally, you've got a 10 to 20% sustainability weighting, keeping in mind like relevance and proportionality, and that's incorporated into your tenders. We could go on forever. This is an interesting topic. You can see the interest from the audience and the queries. And I want to thank all of the panel members for making the time, for agreeing to be on this panel and providing the insights, not just to the HE sector, research organizations, NHS, medical sectors, and pharma sectors, everybody who works in the lab, who comes across autoclaves and what have you. Thank you very, very much. We've shared a lot of links in the chat box as well, and I hope to see you all again. But thank you to the panel and the delegates as well. We shall close the session for today. Take care, everybody. See you. Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you, Elisa. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.